Everybody, welcome to Time for Tea with Megan Kuhn. I'm coming to you not live today like I had hoped, but my son has a story time tonight with his preschool class. And so it's at the same time that I would normally do a live session. So this week we're gonna have to just do a premiere when the time comes, and I hope that's okay. So as in every episode of Time for Tea, I'm going to share a little bit about myself, and then we'll have our book discussion, and then I'll close us with a poem. So, and also let me start by saying welcome to May. I feel like April went by fairly quickly for me anyway. This pace of life is very different, and it's been intriguing to me how that's affected my sense of time overall. I will say that some good news. For those of you who follow my Facebook or Instagram, you may have noticed that my publisher, Perspective Press, has been struggling in these conditions. And so they had a GoFundMe to raise money. And if they got to a certain point, they'd be able to receive a grant. And they have reached that point. They could still use some help. So please consider supporting my publisher, Perspective Press, especially if you read my novel, Sweet Divinity, and you enjoyed it, because they're interested in the sequel. So if you want to see that, donate if you can. Or you could just purchase books that are published by Perspective Press, and that works too. Okay, and I would also say that the next book we're going to read or discuss will be my novel, Sweet Divinity. So if you haven't had a chance to read it, you can order it directly from Perspective Press. If you live in Greenville, South Carolina, you can purchase it at M. Judson Booksellers, or you can order from Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and it is available in ebook. So that'll be the next book that we discuss in probably 3 weeks or so. But anyhow, all right. So, so today a little bit about me. I'm really excited to start these book discussions and to really talk about how you read actively. I think a lot of us love reading, and we love reading for pleasure, but we don't necessarily know how to read for the craft of it and the art of it. And so that's something I'm hoping that I can help with through this series. So why me, you might be asking? Not just because I wrote a book, but I have a bachelor's degree in English as well as a master's degree in English, and I was an English teacher for 15 years. So this is my joy and my passion, and I'm really excited that I get a chance to do it again. So that's a little bit of background as to why I think I'm an okay guide for this particular journey. So, fact about me for the day, I decided to name this series Time for Tea because when I was in London a little over a year ago, my first day in London, we got off the airplane, we were taken to Covent Garden, and the first thing that a couple of friends and I did was have tea. And my teacup at the tea shop said Time for Tea in this beautiful script, and I loved it, and I have a photo of it, and I'll probably post it online so you can see. And I was thinking, what do I call this venture? Do I call it Reading with Megan? Like, let's read books. I think I'm pretty creative in many ways, but naming something is not one of them. So I had a lot of really good suggestions actually come to me from friends and posts. But then I was looking through my photos from London, daydreaming about being somewhere else besides my home. And I saw that photo and I thought, yeah, Time for Tea. Plus I just love tea. So in case you're wondering what kind of tea I drink, that's what I'm going to tell you about today with myself. First of all, I drink out of this particular teacup and saucer. I have several, and you'll probably see them throughout, but this one I use most often. It was my grandmother's china. She bought this china with her first ever paycheck she got from working at a dress shop. And we never used it when I was growing up. It just kind of, sat there as china does. And then she asked if I would take it, and I said yes, and I will use it. And so whenever I use it, I think of her, and she was a huge inspiration to me in every area of my life. So I use her teacup. And then what kind of tea, you might ask? Well, it depends on the time of day. In the morning, I like to begin with a fruity tea. I really like Tazo or Tazo, I don't really know how you say it, but the passion fruit tea. The best fruit tea I ever had was at a tea shop in Hendersonville, North Carolina. It's called a Southern Cup. If you're anywhere in the area, it is worth a drive. It's fantastic. They do an excellent high tea. It's this beautiful little cottage, and I can't say enough good things about it. So it's called the Southern Cup Fine Teas, and I had a strawberry tea there, and oh my goodness, that was heavenly tea. So, so I like to start with a fruity tea. In the evenings, I usually drink a mint tea or a peppermint tea, and sometimes I drink sleepy time tea or chamomile. I also have a chamomile and honey I like. But if I'm drinking tea during the day or when I'm writing, this is the tea that I drink. And so I brought the box or the container to show you. So this tea was gifted to me by one of my fantastic students named Luciana. And it is Harney and Sons Fine Teas, Vanilla Comaro. And she gave me this tea because she knew how much I like tea. We were having it at a tea party in our class. She was like, you can take it home. I was like, oh, then I shall. And then I looked everywhere for this tea, and I could not find the tea. And then by golly, if I didn't find the tea at Target. So amazing. So before we all went into lockdown, I went to Target, bought some more tea, so I'm ready to go. But I really love this tea. It's only slightly caffeinated, which is good because my body has an intolerance to caffeine, which is very unfortunate for tea drinking, but it probably explains why I drink the teas I do. And I also love a good decaffeinated Earl Grey with some cream and sugar. But I love this tea because it has a beautiful vanilla scent and a lovely vanilla taste without being overpowering. It's a subtlety. Anyway, so I recommend this one. I haven't tried any of the others in the line because I'm a person who becomes attached to one thing and then I just overdo it. So I can't speak to the others, but this is what I drink, and this is what I'll be drinking during time for tea. All right, so the first book we chose, or I chose, was Lord of the Rings by William Golding. And I chose the book, as I mentioned before, because I've seen a lot of memes about it on social media, considering the situation that we're in. And also because it's one of those books that a lot of people are assigned to read in school and don't read. And so no time like the present to right some wrongs or to just read it differently. Here's the thing. As you grow and as you age, you read differently. And this makes sense because you have a wider vocabulary, you've had more life experience, so you bring something different to the book. So for example, The Book to Kill a Mockingbird is one of my all-time favorite books. I recognize there are some controversies with it, and we can talk about that sometime. But I think I love the book so much because it has aged so well with me. So I remember reading it in middle school, and the Boo Radley storyline was my jam. I was all over that Boo Radley storyline, the gifts in the tree, like the whole deal. I read it again in college and just on my own. And it was really all about the trial of Tom Robinson and the concepts of justice in the book. And then I read it again once I had become a parent. And I'll be if that book wasn't just completely different for me. It was broken wide open. And the beauty of the relationship between Atticus and Scout and the complexity of it was just, it opened a whole new layer of that book for me. So I look forward to reading it again. Maybe I'll read it soon, actually, because now I'm closer to the age of Atticus, and I would like to read it again with that kind of experience too. So I always recommend that you reread books that you read when you were younger. And this goes for books that you love just because you were young too. So for example, when I was in elementary school, one of my favorite books was Caddy Woodlawn. Oh, how I love Caddy Woodlawn. I can't tell you how many times I read Caddy Woodlawn. I grew up on a farm, so I think I was just like all in on that. But man, if I didn't love that book. And then I reread it recently, and once again, I just saw it completely differently because I was reading it now from an adult point of view with so much more experience. So sometimes we read books in school really before you can we can comprehend the full essence of the book. That doesn't mean we shouldn't read it because you read it differently. But what it does mean is that you should read it again when you're older and you're perhaps wiser. So that's another reason I chose Lord of the Flies, which I keep calling Lord of the Rings, and I'm not sure why, because it's very different books. But anyway, so here we go. So I was thinking about where to begin in our discussion with Lord of the Flies, and I think that the best way to begin is just to talk a little bit about conventions in novels. So when you're reading, there are certain conventions you want to look for and certain archetypes and then elements of fiction that are important for you to really sort of grab onto at the very start. So if we were live right now, then I'd turn all teacher and make you name these elements, but I'll just hand them out to you since it's our first time together. So the setting is one. The setting is always important. As a writer, I think about this too. I mean, the setting provides local color. It can provide a tone. There's a whole context with a setting. And then it can also work symbolically. For example, in our book, Lord of the Flies, the setting is this uninhabited island. And islands, of course, are associated with isolation. And then the fact that it's uninhabited means that it is a wild place that has not been, and I'm going to use air quotes a lot when we talk about this book, civilized by man. There's something primeval about it, something very organic. And the island in many ways is very much alive all around. So for example, when they talk of the one child talks about how they saw a beastie in the woods, right? That there's something in there. Thank you, Jack. This is my son, Jack. He's not to be confused with the Jack in the book. He is very different than that Jack. He brought me this Winnie the Pooh plate.
Because they ate all of my roll quesadilla.
Very good. Peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah.
All right, let me finish this and then I'll come hang out with you.
Why do you have cocoa?
It's not cocoa, it's tea. Oh, he doesn't think it smells very good, but
No,
I love the scent of vanilla.
No, I want tea.
You want tea?
Yeah.
I'm raising him right. Okay, after I finish this, I'll get you some tea, okay? Can you go back in there for a few minutes?
Oh, that tea smells disgusting.
Disgusting. I'll get you a different tea. All right, well, let me finish talking about the book. Okay. The beastie, right? So this concept that the island is also alive. When these boys arrive at the island, it's this whole concept of, you know, we're going to climb to the top and make sure it's an island, and we're going to build this fire on top of the island, and there aren't any beasties in the island, and we're going to kill the pigs on the island. So it's this very dominant idea. But we have to always remember when you're reading books that are set in nature, that nature is very much alive, and nature can really be an agent in a novel. A great example of this is the novel Deliverance by James Dickey. That is a gem of a novel. It's fantastic. If you saw the movie and you were traumatized, don't let that bother you. It's such a good book. And I mean, the river in that book is the main character. It's an agent of change and conflict. Astounding. A book like Heart of Darkness is the same. There's so much of the setting and of nature that's alive, and that is an active character who is in fact interacting with the other characters in the novel. And it's the same here. Right, with the island. So the island, the setting represents isolation, right? And I mean, I know what you're thinking. Duh, there was a plane crash and they're isolated on the island. Well, yeah, but it's not just a physical isolation. They're really isolated from civilization, as we know. And so something I really want you to think about as you're reading this book is if the boys represent civilization. And in many ways, they do. They have their uniforms on when they first arrive. They are in charge of keeping the fire, and fires are often associated with civilization, you know, and the creation, the discovery of how to build fire. They try to build their homes. They try to assert a sort of hierarchy upon this place and all the people who are there, right? They're going to elect the leader, and it's all going to be organized, and they're going to have the conch, and the conch is going to allow you to speak, right? I would point out that the conch as well is a thing of nature, and it's just described as this beautiful, let me see if I can find it because it's such a lovely description. It's in chapter 1. Let's see, because Piggy sees the shell. I'm sorry, it's terrible singing, but it's just what I do. It's on page 16 in mine. The shell was interesting and pretty and a worthy plaything, but the vivid phantoms of his daydream still interposed between him and Piggy, who in this context was an irrelevance. And they talk about the palm sapling a little more. Ralph took the shell from Piggy, and a little water ran down his arm. In color, the shell was deep cream, touched here and there with fading pink. Between the point, worn away into a little hole, and the pink lips of the mouth, lay 18 inches of shell with a slight spiral twist and covered with a delicate embossed pattern. Right? It's beautiful, the shell. It is deep cream, which is a light color amidst the darkness of this island. The touched here and there of fading pink. There's something so calming about it and beautiful. The pink lips of the mouth of the shell. Oh, those are beautiful words. But also it gives the shell a kind of life of its own. And then, of course, the spiral twist and the delicate embossed patterns. There's something really beautiful about the shell, but it's still something natural. And they try to use that piece of nature for their own devices, right? The shell very much represents power, right? Which is why the scene happens where Piggy's holding it. And he says, but I'm holding the shell. You have to listen to me. I'm holding the shell, right? The shell represents power because there's power in voice. But in this book, a lot of the power comes from who is the dominant. From the beginning when they climb, Jack's back. From the beginning when they climb up to the top to assert themselves over. They say that they're going to see if it's an island, but really it's about, climbing that mountain and standing at the top and being Jack. Maybe he is like the Jack on the island. I really hope not, but it's times like this when I wonder, maybe so. All right, you need to go so I can finish doing this, please. Thank you. So the conch represents power, and it represents this attempt to employ some sense of structure and fairness, and also to impose a civilized system upon a place that is wild, right? So the setting is very important, and I want you to think as you read through the book of the role of the island and the natural elements that are on the island, the pigs, the brush. And remember too that at the beginning they set fire to the island. I mean, they come and they attack the island basically by lighting it on fire and destroying so much of it. So you've got this conflict, which is, just sit quietly. In literature, a really typical conflict that a lot is written about is between civilization and savagery is usually how it's put. I don't know if I necessarily like those terms, but between the civilized and the uncivilized. It's nice to be loved. And you see that here very explicitly with this conflict between the boys and the natural island. But we also see as the novel begins that this conflict is also within them, these boys who are quote unquote civilized, who show up in their uniforms, who have come on an airplane, which is this very unnatural way of, flying in when man cannot. The marching in lines and all of this, the insistence on building of the houses, right? So we see this attempt to be civilized, and yet how quickly it dissipates, right? The clothes come off almost immediately, and Ralph is standing there naked in the sun, and this is a moment where he returns to this sort of natural state, and he's calling out. Jack, when he paints his face, this is a really important moment in the book. Let's see, it's in chapter 4, because their hair is growing all long as well. And Jack starts to paint his face. Let's see. Oh gosh, there's where they come back with the pig. We'll get to that in just a minute. It's really important. What in the world? Why can't I find it? This is why one should mark one's pages that she wishes to return to. Okay, here we are, page 63. Jack planned his new face. He made one cheek and one eye socket white. Then he rubbed red over the other half of his face and slashed a black bar of charcoal across from right ear to left jaw. He looked into the pool for his reflection, but his breathing troubled the mirror. right? And so he paints his face using these elements of nature that he's found. Part of it is white, which unfortunately is often a symbol in literature of sort of civilization. And then red, which is more blood-like, so this represents the duality of Jack, right? That Jack came in here a quote unquote civilized boy like the others, but he is one of the first to really turn toward this more violent way of being, what we might determine as uncivilized. And then of course the black streak across too, which is the darkness that we see coming into him. And really from the start, there's this power struggle between Ralph and Jack. And I want you to really think about those two as opposing sides and conflict, right? And throughout this first part of the book, there are many moments when they get along, right? They're having an argument, and then Golding writes that they go and they jump in the pool, and all of a sudden all the arguments are gone, and they're splashing around and being kids, right? There is a struggle for power between the two of them. Ralph is this sort of self-proclaimed leader, but Jack also wants to lead. And notice that Jack is the one who takes the stance of the most important thing we can do is hunt and kill. And Ralph says the most important thing that we can do is build houses and keep the fire going for a signal. Those are two very different ways of looking at this situation. One of them is about returning to civilization and imposing a sort of civilization upon it. And the other is about survival, and regardless of the brutality that it takes for that. Now, I don't think Golding's saying that if you're stuck on an island, you should not worry so much about eating and go and do all these other things, right? He's employing this literary, these elements for literary analysis upon the text, right? But so Jack and Ralph are sort of two different sides of humanity. And in this moment, when Jack has his face painted, you see that, that there's some brutality and some sort of, the sort of natural, what's the best word? But this sort of uncivilized but natural state of man. Mommy! Oh, the children. Speaking of brutality. Okay, so a couple other characters we need to talk about. One of them is Piggy. He's a really important character. That's such an understatement. It's not an accident that the animals they're hunting on the island are pigs, wild pigs. And that there's a character in the book named Piggy. Not an accident. There are not accidents in novels. Details are chosen very specifically, and as is this one. And hold on, I'm gonna pause while I figure out what's going on with my brutal beast. Crisis averted. All right, so back to Piggy. So it's important that the first two characters who really appear here are Ralph and Piggy. The first characters who emerge in a novel are often very significant. That doesn't mean they're gonna be there throughout the entire novel, necessarily. We've certainly probably all read novels where a character appears in the opening and then we don't see them again, but there's always a purpose and a reason. Ralph, of course, becomes the leader on this island, but Piggy becomes a very symbolic character himself. And I want you to really think about this, and I want to sit here and just tell you. But it's important that, you know, Piggy talks about, he's a sensitive guy. He talks about how he doesn't like this nickname. Just please don't let anyone call me that. Because words have power, words matter, and names matter, and names have power. And by everyone calling him Piggy, they are, it's going great, you guys. By everyone calling him Piggy, through these words, they're able to really, my battery's gonna die. They're able to really hold him down and lower his status and therefore his power. Hold on, let me plug it. All right, I'm plugged in. Battery's not gonna die. All right, so back to Piggy. So we were talking about his name and how his name allows people to put him down and assert themselves over him. But that doesn't mean he gives up. He often tries to speak. I refer back to that whole scene with the conch, right? I have the shell. I can speak. I get to speak. I get to speak. He tries to assert himself. But I want you to really think about what Piggy represents here. What is he trying to say? When you look at the words that come out of Piggy's mouth, what's he trying to do that no one else is? And the other element to really pay attention to is how many daggum times Golding mentions Piggy's glasses. Now, think about this for a minute, right? When you have descriptors of a character, often you only get a couple things, right? One of these characters has blue eyes, that's Jack, right? Blue eyes are usually symbolic of innocence, which is intriguing because Jack begins to lose his here. Oh my goodness, my son has cotton all over. It's George Washington.
No, it's Santa's beard.
Oh, that's right. Okay, let me finish up. There's the little boy who has the birthmark on his face, who then disappears and probably perishes in the fire, which is, you know, that he is marked for something. And he is also sort of a prophet because he talks about this and the beastie, and they don't believe him, right? So that there's a significant mark for him, the marked from birth idea. Simon we'll talk about in a minute. But then Piggy's, you know, two defining characteristics are his size, which associates him with a name, which associate him with the pigs on the island, but also the glasses. And so when a character wears glasses or a monocle or something that's associated with them all the time, like a certain style of hat or a certain color, right? That's an intentional choice by the author, right? He didn't have to have Piggy glasses, or he could have just mentioned it the first time and never talked about it again, right? But he doesn't do that. He lets the glasses really become essential for certain plot points and for moments. He allows the glasses to enhance other symbols and meanings. After all, it's the glasses, right, that are used to start the fire, right? The fire being this sort of symbol of civilization, but also this powerful destroyer. But it's Piggy's glasses that start the fire. None of those boys know how to start the fire without his glasses. And when Jack breaks them, right, breaks one part of them.
You're George Washington.
I am George Washington. I prefer maybe Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. He had like a super cool beard. Anyway, can you put that back up where you found it, by the way?
Yeah. Oh.
Maybe. We'll see if it ends up there.
But just nothing.
I don't even know what I was saying. Oh, the glasses. When Jack breaks the glasses, he's not only trying to assert himself over Piggy, not only does he destroy one of the ways in which they create fire, the light of civilization, but also this agent of damage. But in doing that, he also limits Piggy's sight. And so recall, you see where I'm getting here? Some of you are like, no, that's cool. We're training, right? Glasses, the purpose of glasses is to help you see more clearly. And so when characters wear glasses, they often see something differently than others, or they have something to say. And when a character cleans their glasses, that usually means that they're able to see things without obscurity that other people are missing. So there are many times in here, and maybe it annoyed you, and you're like, what in the world is the obsession with Piggy cleaning his glasses? Or maybe you were like, you know what, they're on an island in the middle of nowhere, but his glasses get dirty really quickly. And you're right. And there are many times when his glasses get steamed up because of his feelings, right? So that he can't see entirely clearly because of his feelings. But glasses let us see, and they let us see more clearly. And therefore, characters who have glasses often have more clarity on the situation. So when I think of glasses on characters, I think of another writer I love named Flannery O'Connor, and I think we're going to read a book by her too called Wise Blood. And she often uses glasses to symbolize a character who is going to come into some kind of revelation. And so that's what we have here with Piggy. If you look at the things that Piggy says, Piggy is the one who's always trying, he's reasonable. He's being a reasonable person. He finds the shell and comes up with the idea to use it to call other people. He explains to Ralph how to use the shell. He, I could spend 15 minutes talking about all the different intelligent things that Piggy says that are ignored by everyone around. And so his glasses are very representative of that. And so when Jack breaks the glasses, it's not just that now he's messed up how they make their fire. It's not just that he was being mean to Piggy and asserting himself. He's also shutting Piggy down. Piggy can't see as clearly. Piggy says over and over, now I can only see halfway. Now I can only see halfway, right? This clarity that Piggy has at the beginning about what they should be doing and how they should be doing it, it's halfway gone now. He can't see as clearly. And Jack does that. He takes away that bit of sight. All right, Simon as well, we have to spend a couple moments on, because Simon's an odd little character, isn't he? I love Simon. Let's see. Simon, I think the most telling moment for Simon is when he creates his own home. And this is at the end of chapter 3, pages 56 and 57. I won't read the whole thing, but he builds his home apart from all the others. And it's very much inside the jungle. There's a path. He goes inside. The jungle closes in. There's beautiful description. Tall trunks bore unexpected pale flowers all the way up to the dark canopy where life went on clamorously. The air here was dark too, and the creepers dropped their ropes like the rigging of foundered ships. His feet left prints in the soft soil, and the creepers shivered throughout their lengths when he bumped them. He came at last to a place where more sunshine fell. Since they had not so far to go for light, the creepers had woven a great mat that hung at one edge of an open space in the jungle. Anyway, I would read on, but he finds a place where there's beauty, there's sunshine, there are flowers, there are the sounds of bright, fantastic birds, the bee sounds, even the crying of gulls that were returning to their roosts among the square rocks were fainter, right? And then he creates this home out of leaves, and in sort of the darkness of this, but there's a description about the candle-like buds, and there's a canopy. So he goes from the sunshine to this sort of darkness, but it's within nature. So he doesn't build this hut out on the beach, you know, amidst all the other boys. He creates a place that's within the jungle, within the island, right? That and there's something about Simon that already seems so in tune with the island. And when he goes into the forest, it says he walks with an air of purpose, right? So you've got these characters who are all representative of different ways of handling this and different aspects of humanity or civilization, right? Ralph, who's this leader who wants to lead, but he doesn't know how to do it well. If he did, things would be different with Piggy. But he has this desire to lead, but he also wants to be rescued. He gets so angry when they see the bit of the ship and the fire has gone out, right? And so that's what he wants, civilization. Jack, who is turning toward this more, I guess I'll just use this savage, I just don't like the word, but this more base level of humanity. Piggy, who represents reason, right? And learning and reason, right? Who's already half blinded here, and we're only 4 chapters in. And then Simon, who is more attuned with nature and is quieter and more slight. He's described as being thinner and more slight of frame, right? And so these are 4 very different ways of being, right? You've got the children also who are there. I mean, they're all children, but these little itty bitties. And there's a really, I think, honestly, I know that it's distressing when the pig is killed. We'll talk about that in a second. But I think perhaps the most distressing moment of this thus far is the moment when the little kids are playing in the sand and Jack comes by and he ends up, I think it's Jack, kicks sand into the one little kid's eye and he's crying and everything. And but he cries all the sand out. And then the other small child who's with him starts throwing the sand into his eyes. And they had just been building sandcastles before. They were building sandcastles, this sort of fanciful, innocent thing for kids to do. And then here come these boys knocking over all the sandcastles, which people do all the time at the beach, and it makes me really mad. But I don't rage. And they're happily building their sandcastles, and now they're harming each other like that. So we're already starting to see early on this conflict and this sort of idea of civilization, right? Are we as humans really naturally a civilized people? Or is that a social construct that we all play a role in, right? And if we're removed from that construct, what happens to us? Do we set up a new one and keep it going, set up our own civilization, our own hierarchy and way of being? Or do we allow our instincts and perhaps deeper, darker ways of being to emerge? So I'm going to end by talking a little bit about the scene where they've killed the pig, and then I've got a quote from you. Actually, I'll just read the quote first. It's from page 42. Jack holds out his hands for the conch and stood up, holding the delicate thing carefully in his sooty hands. I agree with Ralph. We've got to have rules and obey them. After all, we're not savages. We're English, and the English are best at everything. So we've got to do the right things, right? It's one of the most important quotes in the book, I'd say. I agree with Ralph. We've got to have rules and obey them. After all, we're not savages. We're English, and the English are best at everything. So we've got to do the right things. And I read this and I think all the time of, but we're Americans, and the Americans are the best at everything, right? And there's certainly a criticism that you can already see growing of that kind of attitude, right? That a certain group of people are the best. We're the best at everything. We've got to do right, right? We're not savages. We're English, right? We're not, we're not awful. We're this, obviously. Well, newsflash, the English, Americans, people have done some really awful things in the world before and are doing them right now. So just throwing that out there. All right, so the last bit to talk about is the pigs, the pig. And when they come in, having hunted the pig, and they have given up the fire to go and hunt the pig. So it's a turn to this sort of more savage-like way. And I would also point out that the descriptions are important there too. When Jack describes how he went after the pig and how he was crawling on his stomach and crawling through the forest. So he's got his paint on, right? So he's picked up these elements of nature and slathered himself with them. And then he's crawling through the brush, which is an animal way of being, right? And yes, I know humans are animals, but you know what I'm saying here, right? So it's an animal way of hunting with his spear. And note too that at the very beginning, he doesn't kill the pig. He has a chance to, and he doesn't. But then he does once the transformation occurs, once he paints his face, because he says, oh, I stick out, like I need to blend in, right? He wants to become part of nature. Now this is interesting too, because he's doing it in this way and Simon does it very differently. And that's important as well, right? To become one with nature, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to paint your face up. And it also doesn't mean you just go out and sit and commune with nature and that's the only way, right? These are two different ways of doing it. But he does end up very animalistically crawling through, and then they circle the pig, right? So they take this creature, which is very dominant, and there's pigs all over this island. And like, this is the island pretty much belongs to the pigs. And here they come and they assert themselves upon the island. They burn half of it down, not half, but they burn a bunch of it down. And now they've come to those creatures who dominate this island, and they surround them and then murder, right? Now I get it. We got to survive. We got to have food. Okay. I'm totally with you on a plot level. I'm just trying to show you more of the complexity of meaning that comes out of this as well. It's not to say that they don't need to eat and so they could just live off bananas, but there's more to it than that. Golding's crafted something here, right? He didn't just pick the color red of paint just because he thought it was pretty, right? He means it, okay? Just like all artists do. And so they describe how they've killed this pig, and it's right around this time as well that the piggy's glasses are broken, and that's important too. There are two pigs that are being subdued by Jack. And so Jack, who comes, and he does apologize about the fire, but as he says, I painted my face and I got you meat, right? And he says this several times, right? I got you meat. I got you meat, right? And so it's his way of asserting himself over Ralph, right? Ralph, who has the conch, who is in charge. He has this symbol of power, right? That makes this huge noise that calls everyone, like he has the voice. And yet here comes Jack, all painted up, very much there's a relationship there, a symbolic relationship. And here he comes, I brought you meat. I brought you meat, right? Piggy helps make the fire. Ralph helps make sure we get all the buildings. I brought you meat, right? And then at the end of the chapter, and those twins as well are also have become sort of seemingly bloodthirsty at this time. Let's see, page 74. Then Jack leapt to his feet, slashed off a great hunk of meat because they're not letting Piggy eat. And Simon gives his piece of meat to Piggy, right? Which also tells us something about Simon. There is a sensitivity to Simon, I hope that you've picked up on. And Jack slashes off this great hunk of meat and flung it down at Simon's feet. Eat, damn you. He glared at Simon. Take it. He spun on his heel, center of a bewildered circle of boys. I got you meat. I painted my face. I stole up. Now you eat, all of you. And I. Slowly the silence on the mountaintop deepened till the click of the fire and the soft hiss of roasting meat could be heard clearly. Jack looked around for understanding, but found only respect. That's an interesting line, isn't it? He looks for understanding, but finds only respect. There's a difference in those things, right? Understanding is, there's a sense of connection there. You respect a position or perhaps a person, but there's a depth that comes with understanding. And he looks around and sees none of that, but he does see respect from everyone. Ralph stood among the ashes of the signal fire, his hands full of meat, saying nothing. What a moment Golding has created there, right? Here's Ralph standing in the ashes of the fire that was supposed to take them back to civilization, holding this meat. Their rescue was sacrificed for this meat that was taken in this violent manner, okay? This outnumbering of one small beast. And there he stands in the ashes of the fire, hope of rescue destroyed, holding the meat. And there's something very sacrificial about that image, right, of him standing in the fire with the meat. And then they talk about where they found the pigs. But there's this moment where Jack really tries to assert himself, right? I painted my face, I stole up, now you eat, all of you, and there's nothing left. And what do you think he's thinking there? Do you think he's thinking like that he's in charge now? Is he thinking, you eat and I'm gonna save us all? What do you think he's thinking in that moment? And then they all tell the story, and it's disturbing, right? I cut the pig's throat. It's this whole description of how they killed the pig. And then they start the chanting. Kill the pig, cut her throat, bash her in. Kill the pig, cut her throat, bash her in, right? There's something very maniacal about that and very twisted. And this sort of glee at the violence and pain inflicted upon something living, albeit for survival. Like, I get it, but there's killing to eat, and there's killing for the pleasure of taking life. And it's a little bit blurred here. So when we left off, Ralph says he's calling an assembly with the conch. I'm calling a meeting, even if we have to go on in the dark, down the platform when I blow it now. And he turns and walks off down the mountain, right? So here they are at this up at this point, right, in the ashes of this fire, eating this half-cooked pig. It's described as half-cooked. It's kind of raw, right? Eating it, kill the pig, bash it in, slit her throat, right? And so in the first 4 chapters of this novel, you have the establishment of setting, establishment of characters, and really the beginning of the development of the theme. So what I'd like for you to do is, if you're reading along with us, awesome. If not, maybe you'll want to read now. I gotta tell you, the next chapter, Beast from the Water, and the chapter after that, Beast from Air, Gift for the Darkness. You got some good stuff coming up, my friends. So for next week, if we read the next 4 chapters, that'd be great. And what I'd like you to do, since I couldn't go live this week, is to post or to comment any questions that you have, and I'll make a follow-up video discussing the questions, or we can just discuss as well in the comments. But I want to get you engaged in this. So what questions do you have about the book or about me? What observations do you have that maybe I didn't get to today or that I missed? I want to learn from reading this book too, and I don't pretend that I can see everything in it. Some of the smartest comments I've ever made about books came out of somebody else's mouth first, and I do give credit where credit's due. So please let me know. And then finally, I said I would leave you with a poem, and I didn't pick one out in advance. Oh, yes, I did. Let me get it for you. So National Poetry Month ended in April, but I didn't get a chance to send you off with a poem for National Poetry Month. So I'm going to leave you with a poem that really resonates with me. If I were a brave person, I would have part of this poem probably tattooed on me because I love it so much. You're going to be really surprised that it's by Mary Oliver. But wow. So here we go. It's called The Summer Day. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean. The one who has flung herself out of the grass. The one who is eating sugar out of my hand. Who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down. Who's gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I've been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? Have a great day, you guys. Thanks for showing up.